Commissioner.
Well, let's see. Good morning, everyone. I am Rena Moran, Ramsey County Commissioner, District 4. And we are going into our morning board workshop on property assessments. And so before we get started, why don't we go around and introduce ourselves? And we will start with Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mary Jo McGuire, County Commissioner, District 2.
Nicole Freda, County Commissioner, District 1.
Rafael Ortega, District 5.
Victoria Reinhardt, District 7.
Trista Martinson, District 3.
Corey Erickson, Deputy County Assessor.
Judy Lazar, Manager of the Assessor's Office, Residential.
Pat Chapman, the County Assessor.
Karen Francois, Deputy County Manager for Information and Public Records.
Joanna Berg, County Manager, and I believe Commissioner Zhang is.
Yes.
Commissioner Zhang. Can you introduce yourself?
We heard it before.
He-
Yeah, she was, she's muted, but
Okay,
Commissioner John, can you hear us?
She might have stepped away too. Commissioner Zhang is online with us.
Okay, why don't we just go back here in the back?
Yeah, Tim Grawl, Manager of Appraisal Services and County Assessor Department.
Aaron T. Lynn, Supervisor of Land Records, County Assessor.
Angie Patrick, Interim Racial and Health Equity Administrator for the IPR Service Team.
Karen Collins. And can you change your clip?
But thank you, everyone. So today we have the Assessors Department here who is going to talk about property assessment and equity impacts. Property assessments will talk about statutory requirements of the office, qualification of the personnel in the office, and how we value residential and commercial property. On the equity impact side, we look at the programs that the office is participating in and how the office is planning to engage community. And so with that, I'm not sure who I need to pass it on to. All right.
Thank you, Commissioners, Chair and County Manager. It's really our honor to be here today. We came to you last year and we just wanted to be able to come this year and give you an update. Our outcomes for today, we want you to have a better and deeper understanding of our assessor's office. The work and the way that we do our work in the assessor's office is pretty strictly governed by legislation. However, today you're going to be able to see how we've done some innovative things in the equity space, as well as how we value properties and the importance of that, of course, and understanding the property valuation process, residential properties, commercial properties, and industrial properties, and then looking at all of the efforts that we are undertaking in the assessors department for equity and the role that the assessor plays there. You've met our team. We would like to have had a lot of other people from the department here, but this is a really big time for the assessors department. And so they're out in the field doing their work. So I am now going to turn it over to Pat Chapman, who is our county assessor and has a big surprise for us today.
Well, thank you, Deputy County Manager Francois. Good morning, Chair Moran. Good morning, Commissioners. County Manager Berg, thanks again for having us here. And as we sat here a year and a half ago, whenever it was, I remember regaling you guys with a story of when I was a young man and playing with a doll, using him to assess my sister's Barbie dream house. Well, we have that doll with us today. Here is complete with vest, camera, tablet. He's got his tape measure. So he's ready to hit the street and assess the county of Ramsey.
I'm gonna text it to Commissioner Zhang.
Okay.
So our presenters are today, myself, Corey, and Judy in the office. We're gonna be talking to you today. First, the overview of what we're gonna talk about. market value per state statute. We're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about the assessor's office. We're gonna use a term called CAMA, which stands for Computer Assisted Mass Appraisal. We're gonna talk some about value extremes. And we're gonna talk about the different methods for valuing residential and commercial property values. Some of the equity impacts we'll talk about is modeling and equity. And when we talk about that, we're talking about our value models and how they are equitable. We'll talk about price-related differential or PRD. And this is a way of measuring vertical equity inside of the value column. So that's a kind of a, you know, we always try to use plain speak, and it's hard for us assessors because this is plain for us, but it's not for you. So what that means is, where are our position, the value column? Are we a little high? Are we a little low? Are we a little progressive? Are we a little regressive? Where are we in that? And that's what PRD measures. And then we'll talk about some of our racial covenant work that's upcoming this year. I know we're engaged with a number of groups in that. Really excited to be a part of this. And then we're going to talk about a pilot group that we've got, the affinity group inside of the assessor's office. And then the drum I beat every time I get an opportunity to talk with you guys. And this is mostly for the people watching outside this building, the residents of the county, the property tax refund and how valuable that is at limiting regressivity for individual taxpayers of our county. So we'll start off with property assessments. Our office is statutorily required to value every property at 100% of its market value. We do that as of January 2nd of each year. So that's our charge through the Minnesota statute there, 273.03. This year, Ramsey County is at just over $75 billion in taxable market value. A new all-time high. The assessor's office is built of three business units and a management team. So we have a residential unit with 23 staff. We have a commercial unit with 16 staff. We have assessing services team with 12 staff. And then we have a management team of me and Corey. So this is how we get all of the work done in the assessor's office. And it's really really a wonderful group of people. The face of the office has changed over the 17 years that I've been here, and it's been a really positive thing that we're undertaking. So let's talk about some of the qualifications that the people in the office have to have. All assessors are licensed by the Minnesota State Board of Assessors. And the Minnesota State Board of Assessors, I happen to be the grading chairperson still for this group. So my responsibility with that group is to create exams, grade exams, so engage people to become graders. And Judy sits with me on this board as a grader. And we have a lot of great people in our group that's involved with our Minnesota State Board of Assessors Association to get a lot of great work done. Pre-licensing education is about 120 hours, and that gets you to the first level. And you have 3 years to do that from the day to hire. And then your continuing education requirements are 50 to 60 hours every 4 years, depending upon your license level. And there are 4 license levels in the state of Minnesota. The most common one you'll talk about is the accredited Minnesota assessor, because after you receive your certified Minnesota assessor after your first 3 years of work, you only have 5 years to get to your next AMA level. And this requires writing a form report, which is a full appraisal, 30 to 40 pages long, taking an 8-hour exam that we call it the 8-hour exam, but it usually takes people 6 to 10 hours to take this exam, a full comprehensive exam. So it's quite an accomplishment for people to get to their AMA level. So let's talk about the tools that we use now that we kind of laid out who the people are. So computer assisted mass appraisal, or CAMA. We have an enterprise assessment and tax system now were combined into one unit, and we have a Tyler Technologies product. On the CAMA side, on the assessing side, we've had this product since about 1994. So we have grown through all of the product changes, so we don't still have the green screen 94 version of this. We have a very modern web version of this that has the ability to do valuation several different ways. A market model, which is commonly referred to as the market approach, or you look at comparable sales and then applying your subject. The depreciated cost method, which is valuable for some outlier properties and some special use properties such as churches and stuff like that. Even though they are exempt, we do have to value everything in the county. We have the income model, which is the common approach for most of our commercial properties in the county. Then we have some weighted estimates of those three approaches. We have some trending valuation opportunities for properties that are, you know, square pegs. There's always a property that's, you know, unique, like a dome home in downtown St. Paul on Third. So, you know, you're really not going to be able to model some of that with finding similar sales. So we have to use some other methods, and then a weighted value method where you can blend. So those are some of the opportunities we have inside of CAMA. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Judy, and she's going to talk you a little bit through the market model for the residential properties.
Hi, thank you for having us. So what is the market model? So the market model applies value to homes based on the sales prices of similar homes that have recently sold. The vast majority of residential properties utilizes the market model to determine a value. It is used to illustrate how the forces of supply and demand interact to determine prices. The market model best measures what people are willing to pay for specific property types and features. So Ramsey County is unique in that it uses the market model, which creates a more equitable assessment as it applies actual sales of homes that are most similar. Consequently, this approach is less regressive. Other counties apply the depreciated cost model, which basically determines the cost to build new, applies a factor for depreciation, and then adds in the land value. So to be most effective, property records need to be kept current. So property information is kept current through various ways throughout the year. And this work is performed through the analysis of sales, which will decide which sales get included into the model. In field work, appraisers perform a 5-year property review, or what we refer to as a quintile. Appraisers are required to go see each property at least once every 5 years to ensure the property record is correct. Appraisers will go out into the field and look at each home, often interviewing property owners about features and updating. In permit work, appraisers monitor permit activity and update properties accordingly. And property records are also updated through the open book process, where the homeowner can call in and invite us to come out to take a look at the property to make sure that their property record is correct for a more reliable determination of value. So Ramsey County does use the computer assisted mass appraisal system, or CAMA. So how does this work? So once we get all the good arm's length sales in, we don't include foreclosure sales or estate sales, that type of thing. We use all good arm's length sales, and they're added to the model inside of CAMA. So the CAMA system will then select 5 sales that best reflect the subject in terms of, say, style, size, overall condition and quality, and special features. So the CAMA system then adjusts for those differences to make the comparables look like the subject, and develops a value based on what people are paying for similar homes and those features. So the values are verified by the appraisal staff. At the end of the year, values are verified by the appraisal staff, who look for any anomalies and greater swings in value over the prior year. Staff will investigate why the value may have changed or verified and amend accordingly. I'll talk about this more in the next slide. So values are finalized and published to the residents through the valuation notice. In March, the valuation notice are published and sent to the residents. Information on how to appeal those values is also outlined in those valuation notices. In April, the assessor's report is published on the open data portal. The assessor's report summarizes the factors that impacted the real estate market over the past year. It provides the reader with an understanding of the current market trends and forces, such as interest rates and supply and demand influences. This year's report was posted on April 9th, and that can be found on the information on Ramsey County's website. So market modeling is the most equitable way to value the vast majority of residential properties because it compares like properties with similar features and locational factors. It is less regressive and it creates a higher confidence in the accuracy of values. So how do we know this? So we measure this through the sales ratio. The sales ratio compares real estate sales prices to market values calculated by the assessors to measure the overall accuracy of the values. The State Board of Equalization and the Minnesota Tax Court study the ratio results to ensure property assessments are consistent across the state. For Minnesota statute, a 90 to 105% sales ratio must be met. And since I've been with the county for just about 9 years now, the sales ratio has always met the standards set by the Department of Revenue. Next slide. So what causes significant value increases and decreases? So in the case of new construction, the prior value would have been possibly vacant land. And once you improve the property with a home, that would increase the value to a improved property. Significant remodel and repair. If you have a home that's all original condition and somebody goes in and remodels the whole thing, top to bottom, that will cause the value to increase because buyers tend to like homes that are remodeled and they tend to pay more for those. So that can cause this the spike in value there. So the building removal, we got to go to the review of the quintile. So when during quintile review, we go out into the field and we look to see if there's any changes either in the property, either superior, if it was remodeled and it has new siding, we look at that, or if it's the value can go up or down based on the condition we find when we go out into the field. So building removal. So the example timeline. So how does this work? So the building removal timeline. So this is captured in the assessment by all properties are valued as of January 2nd of each year. So if the value of the property is $231,900 as of January 2nd, 2023, and then the building is torn down in May of 2023, the taxes will be paid against the pre-tear down value because it existed on January 2nd. So if nothing is rebuilt on that lot, then the vacant land value of say 79.9 would be applied for the following assessment year.
I have a question. So what is the impact of that on surrounding homeowners and renters? Is there impact, even though the vacant land is torn down? No one, who pays that tax and how did that impact the surrounding?
Whoever owns that property.
The land?
Yeah, whoever
The
owns the
land.
land, yeah.
So they still, so there's just not an impact on?
No.
Okay.
It's typically, in most cases, it's gonna be somebody who has an older home. It could be in disrepair, so a lot of times an investor will come along and remodel it or tear it down and build new, whatever, depends on how bad the house might be. If they determine whether it's worth saving or rebuilding.
Yeah, so I was kind of thinking like, in some neighborhoods, there's more vacant lots than others,
Mhm.
Mhm.
right? And I don't know if every piece of land is owned by someone, or it is now the city or someone's space in the impact, or if it's not.
Yeah.
then-
We have a couple of situations like that, and it'll be different based on the neighborhood. One of the things that is in tax law that helps and it kind of moves along the development areas that an improved residential property starts the tax calculation at 1% of value.
Okay.
An unimproved property in a residential situation starts the calculation at 1.25%. So it's gonna be taxed at a higher rate, even though it's probably a lower value.
Mm.
But that, you know, some of that is talking to try to spur it, to make sure those things get developed. But we do also have areas in our county where the community has taken these and made them gardens. You'll see some
Mhm.
vacant lots
Mhm.
that have been community gardens or rain capture gardens and stuff like that. And in that case, the statute allows us to call those properties exempt from
Okay.
taxation,
Mm.
so that the community can benefit from those. So in the very small community gardens and stuff, we
Mhm.
have that ability to take care of.
Mhm.
So let's say it's owned by a foreign investor, like as in not St. Paul foreign, I mean outside investor. And because, you know, they're absent, the community just builds a garden on, right? We have those situations. So does the tax benefit go to that investor then if we?
They would have to meet certain criteria
Okay.
and they'd have to apply for that.
Oh, they have to.
So
apply.
there is an application associated with
Okay,
this, but the
okay.
community one, the true community ones, we seek out those organizations
Okay,
and tell them what they gotta do.
okay,
In that situation, we may not be as aggressive in
okay,
finding out.
got it. Cause it's the owner of the
Right.
property that gets that tax.
And they have to meet certain requirements for us to do this.
Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you.
You got
Go
it.
ahead, sorry.
And next slide.
Okay, so here we have a graph showing the median residential values since 2006. You could see that countywide, suburban, and city of St. Paul they all follow a similar trajectory. So if we look back to 2006, median values were increasing slightly through mid-2008 when the Great Recession started. At that time, prices fell sharply over the next 5 years as foreclosures flooded the market, creating an oversupply coupled with a lack of buyers who lost confidence in the market. Around 2014, median prices began to increase as buyers and investors re-entered the market. It took roughly 10 years for prices to recover from the pre-recession levels. In 2020, prices began to rise sharply as interest rates fell into the mid 3% range. Families felt cramped during quarantine, and pandemic supply chain issues created a housing shortage. So from 2020 through 2023, there were more buyers than sellers, and it was typical for sellers to get multiple offers at well over list price. In 2023, while interest rates rose into the upper 6 to 7% ranges, supply remained tight and prices continued to increase, although at a slower pace. And looking forward, everything remaining the same, we never know what, wars break out, elections happen. So everything remaining the same, market indicators suggest that the market is becoming more stable.
I'll move on to Corey Erickson.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, County Manager Byrd, thank you for having us. Before getting into the details of this slide, I'd like to give some introductory comments on the commercial appraisal unit in the assessor's office. The commercial staff is comprised of 10 appraisers, 2 lead appraisers, 2 assessment appeals specialists, 1 data analyst, and then 1 manager. And then that team is responsible for assessing all commercial, industrial, and apartment parcels in the county, which comprises around 16,000 parcels. And that equates to around, well, just under 10% of the total county parcel count. So Judy spoke about the market model and our mass appraisal system for residential properties. In commercial, we use an income model, which utilizes the income approach, which is the predominant way to value commercial or income producing properties. In its most basic form, the income approach converts a property's income stream into a value estimate. In our mass appraisal system, the income models value the majority of our properties. Properties that are too unique to value in the mass appraisal system get adjusted using a factor or are hand valued entirely outside the mass appraisal system. Like the market model in residential, the commercial income models allow for a better quality, more accurate, and much more uniform and equitable assessment. The models also give newer or inexperienced appraisers a tool for estimating values, which gives them greater ability to do so and greater confidence in valuing properties. Next slide. The assessor's office is, of course, required to follow the market and value properties accordingly. This slide shows how median values for commercial properties have changed over the last 18 assessment years. There's a trend line for suburban Ramsey County, the city of St. Paul, and then there's a countywide trend line. Commercial includes the very broad category of all retail-related, office-related, and hotel-motel properties, or in other words, almost all taxable properties that aren't residential, apartment, or industrial. The median value trend line is higher in suburban Ramsey County than the city of St. Paul, primarily reflecting the fact that there are physically larger properties in suburban Ramsey County than the city, such as larger shopping complexes or larger office campuses, in comparison to the smaller properties you would typically find on a typical St. Paul commercial corridor.
I have a question.
Yes.
So do this vary by, maybe like communities, or if they're on, a transportation, a light rail line, right? As far as, commercial values, because I know I have seen like in the urban core, even like on University Avenue, their values or the sale price is sometimes reaching, someone's asking for $1 million on University Avenue for a commercial piece of land. So this value based on like, a corridor.
Yeah. Chair Moran, I would expect that the trend line, if we trended this for, say, University Avenue, the light rail corridor, that it would mimic pretty much what the city of St. Paul is. But we could get that data.
But I think maybe the question that I can help you with, Chairman Moran, is when we look at valuation income models, they are broken up by different segments. There's not just one model that covers the entire county. And when there are impacts like light rail as an input to those properties that are impacted by that, we do consider that in the valuation process, if that's what you're
And
thinking.
it's more of an increase.
More of an increase, yeah. We have seen that the light rail along University has been a very positive influence to that, that area.
No, absolutely. Yeah, land values have increased significantly since the light rail. So.
Just, no, so land values go up, sometimes forces people out, so then we do see gentrification, so at some point, are we following on how we're doing with that, and what, if we're aware of how we might be displacing people, because now values are higher. I mean, we all want light rail, we all want there to be, strong economy, strong property values, but we don't want to force people out, so.
Well, we do have a data team that could gather some data for you.
Curious.
Our job is to see if we're valuing things right, not following the displacement, unfortunately. Our job is to try to be the cold hard facts,
No, I.
right? And it's a challenging thing because you're sitting there watching this happen. And my whole job is to be 90 to 105. I gotta be in that pocket, so I've got to raise values accordingly, otherwise the state's gonna come in and raise them for me.
But you can be the alarm so that
Right.
we can respond accordingly with policies and practices.
You
that are
bet if
different.
there's
So that's the
specific things
difference.
that you guys wanna talk
Yeah.
about with us and say, hey, when you see this or this, and that's definitely something we could.
Right, so I
Engage
would
well.
just say that would be helpful for us to see
Mhm.
those trends.
And I can respect the fact that you have to do your job. It is not your
Right.
job to see how people be displaced by increased property taxes, because historically, what we know and what we are seeing across the country is that when a light rail comes to within that corridor, not only does commercial values go up, but property values go up, home ownership goes up. And often what we see is that people are being displaced or they've been taxed out of their homes. We have elders who are on a fixed income, have lived there for 25, 30 years, and all of a sudden, those taxes are increasing. And so
You
there
bet.
is an impact that,
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, there's impacts, yeah.
For all trend lines, you can see how values increased through 2008 and then dropped during the financial crisis timeframe of 10 to 12 years ago, and then have increased pretty steadily since. More recently, values stabilized early in the pandemic, increased rather dramatically in the 22 to 23 timeframe, and then have stabilized again here for 2024. The recent upticks in value had a lot to do with the low interest rate environment and then some pent-up investment demand coming immediately out of the pandemic, which has now receded somewhat due to many reasons, including the higher interest rate environment. This slide is identical to the previous slide, but just for industrial properties rather than commercial. Industrial mainly includes properties like warehouses, flex buildings, which are a combination of office and warehouse, and light and heavy manufacturing properties. The overall trend line for industrial is somewhat similar to commercial, with the notable exception being how values have increased so dramatically in recent years. You can see that trend line towards the right side of the graph, especially from 2022 to 2023, which has resulted in some tax shifting from residential to industrial for payable 2024.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard from folks about that. Because, you know, it didn't appear to them that it had changed so much. So was that a result of something that changed in legislation? Or just if they sold it, they would get more for it? What caused that for that particular area?
For industrial, it's a nationwide phenomenon in the last several years. Primarily, and then it's really picked up steam here in the last couple of years, kind of coming out of the pandemic.
Okay,
So we weren't alone with that at all. It's been really a nationwide phenomenon, but it's been driven by, the increased warehouse demand from e-commerce and the popularity of 1 and 2 day delivery. That's just really created a lot of demand for industrial properties. And so values have just increased dramatically, and like Pat said, we have to follow that. So it's resulted in for 23, it resulted in some pretty enormous value increases for certain properties, and then the tax increases this year. So.
okay. So then it makes sense that, because one in particular was quite a bit. And I was talking to her and trying to figure out, okay, and I, didn't have all what I needed, but she said, well, if we can sell it for that, we would do it. So it sounds like they probably could.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably.
I mean, that's the reality of it. They weren't an anomaly. And I think that's what the concern was, that they were an anomaly, that somehow their property was different than the neighbor's property. And so hopefully they then
Yeah.
sold it for what the value was.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, the world shops differently now. And as a result of that, it's really grown that industrial
Yeah.
flex warehouse, where those little, Amazon likes to have stuff all around the city in these flex buildings so that 1 day delivery can happen. And it's really impacted those industrial flex buildings. It's all over. That's
Yeah.
That is really helpful. I thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That is helpful. Just to state the obvious, what we sense is happening. So office space, people aren't going to the office as much. So office space is is the values of, is that going down and industrial is going up? So the bubble, where we push here, it's, because we're not seeing as many people. I mean, businesses are downsizing their office space, but they're upsizing their warehouse space. Is that
Is that happening?
Yeah, office, that's happening to a certain extent. Office values have come down. They've come down, I think our median decrease for St. Paul office downtown for 2024 was something in the 8% range. So yeah, they have come down. Industrial stabilized. So yeah, there's some shifting going on there. And it's all kind of a result of, you know, the changed world post-pandemic, hybrid work environment, things like that seems to be impacting a lot of the commercial markets.
Madam Chair and Commissioner, so if you had a flex building that could be either office or
Yeah.
industrial warehouse,
Yes.
you would shrink the amount of office and grow the amount of warehouse. So we are seeing that, you know, buildings that would be more,
Yeah.
Right.
you know, 60-40 warehouse or 70-30 warehouse are now, you know, you just need someone out front to point the driver to the back of the building and load up and get out of there, you know. So, yeah, there was some of that happening.
Yeah, so this is a great, you know, workshop to give us these trends and things, so, and maybe we're getting to them, you know, like, to see these trends, so like, as our chair said earlier, you know, so we can know what's happening and maybe, you know, and help react, like now, we know that people are leaving downtown St. or they're not, people aren't going to the office as much downtown St. Paul, so what can we do there? So hopefully you'll keep giving us these sort of trends that are happening, like not just that stuff's going up, but like what's actually happening here and all that. So,
Madam Chair, Commissioner, we just posted the assessor's report.
okay, perfect.
All of that is in the assessor's report by jurisdiction in St. Paul and by suburb. On the major property types for industrial, apartment, commercial, residential. All of those are inside of that assessor's report, and you can click and go through and see what the different trends are in your area. And if you have any requests that you want, reach out to us. Maybe there's a chart you need, maybe that we have the capability to be a resource for you all to get information about your area. Just drop me an email, let's have a chat and get you the data you need.
And manager, just, I won't keep harping on this, but yes, thank you for that, but hopefully. I would just ask, if you see some trends that we're not asking about, please let us
Oh,
know.
you bet.
You know,
Well
we
done,
may
Claire.
not
We'll
know
let
to
you know.
ask, we may not know to ask, and I may not be online to look. But let us know if you see trends that we should be like aware of, and hey, can we do anything about it? Whatever.
It's your Martin Cindy and Tabor.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this graph right, because, you know, we often hear, especially in the city of St. Paul, business owners sending the alarm, we're leaving, we can't afford to be in St. Paul,
Right.
we're moving to the suburbs, but I would say they're better off staying in St. Paul based on this graph. Am I reading that right? They're paying less property taxes than if they're heading.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, that depends.
Okay,
Okay, so let's look at all of the tax inputs.
yeah,
By a pure value, you can get more bang for your buck in St. Paul by value. I don't know if that's the same by tax. Are there different taxes in one city
Oh.
versus, so are the taxes in St. Paul and Shoreview similar on the output after we put our inputs? I can't tell you. I don't know.
but what would impact that? So, I mean, I know there's.
City levies, city,
Got it.
there's so many inputs, the school district that you're in. All of those impact your tax output,
Okay.
but so your values. We look at we're the value people, we look at the value inputs and outputs of each value. But now then the tax people go and look at that value and apply all the tax inputs to generate the dollars. So I'm not road enough on that to sit here and expound what is the best
So
tax.
on that note, you know, obviously we send out the tax statements, right? And then
Mhm.
everyone's upset with us on all those other things.
Mhm.
How can we get that data? Cause that's the data we actually need, is what does that look like based on value? I'd like to see what that is with the tax output.
Tax data.
Yeah,
And I
cause
think-
that would tell a real picture of what's. happening.
Yeah, and those, now, I'm not 100% sure on this, Madam Chair, Commissioner. But our auditor treasury department sends out a commissioner packet that kind of gives you some of the impacts that's happening. And so we could take a look at that, and I can communicate with the auditor, Auditor West, and talk about this, and maybe we could have a chat and get you guys some of the information.
Well, I think especially for like our JIBTAC meeting,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
That,
We will
that's
have it
the,
there, yeah.
that's the real question, is not just, you know, we're all talking different, but what does that actually mean to the individual property owner if we're layering and what that looks like?
Yeah, and,
Equity.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, the JIBTAC is exactly where all that data comes out.
I don't think it has been, I've been there for many years and everyone does their presentation,
Mhm.
but it isn't overlaid. And the whole point of JIBTAC is to overlay so we can see the overall impact, but we're not actually seeing that overlay.
Okay.
And so what I'm asking for is a true overlay. If we add the library and school districts of the suburbs, what does that look like? What does that look like in a city with new taxes over the property value, so that we have a clear picture of what's happening?
Perfect.
Yeah,
Well, I got a good note on
Thank
that.
you.
And when, Auditor West and myself are producing the JIBTAC stuff,
Yeah.
we'll focus on that
Okay.
for you guys so that
Thanks.
we can make sure we're
Yeah.
presenting.
Okay,
what you
okay,
need.
then.
I was gonna, similar vein,
Mhm.
so let me just add to, was it your report for 24, you said an 8% decrease
On certain properties in downtown, yeah,
in downtown.
in 17. Yeah.
And does that take 100%? I mean, there are more and more buildings being vacant.
Mhm.
And there are businesses leaving because one just left with 400 employees.
Mhm.
So my question is, when do we reach? When do you think we're gonna reach? Because as take securing as they make decisions,
Mhm.
their people are not coming back.
Yeah.
At best, 2 days a week.
Mhm.
And when do we make the decision that that's reality? And then the conversion of office space to apartments,
Mhm.
residential. Some people, heard people say 10 years, it'll take 10 years. Do we have a scale by which we see what that impact is? Because wouldn't that continue to decrease our tax revenues? If buildings say we're gonna go 80% conversion, 100% conversion, and it takes 10 years.
Yeah.
Now you don't have, because part of your assessment is based on revenue stream, correct?
Yeah, Commissioner, Madam Chair, Commissioner. So it's a delicate balance of what we try to figure out. And St. Paul has been under this transition for a few years, really,
Yeah.
and we've been monitoring it as it's been happening. St. Paul is a little different positioned than like Minneapolis. Minneapolis has so much office space compared to St. Paul. And the buildings are different sizes than St. Paul. So St. Paul lends itself to the transition, right, from office to residential or apartments and stuff of that nature. So the building plates are smaller, the buildings are more susceptible to that. We, by nature, are historians as assessors, so we kind of follow what the trend is doing on an annual basis. We try to think about the forecast ahead of what we think the market's gonna do, and we do that through reading periodicals and looking at national trends and see, you know, because what national trends may be hitting St. Paul next. So we should try to stay up with that through our education process and through all of our associations with the International Association, MAAO, talking around the state, talking with other counties. But it's not like I could tell you 10 years from now, we're gonna look like this in St. Paul, because
I'm not
something
asking
else,
for that.
yeah,
I'm
something else.
asking I'm asking for the revenue to the county,
Yeah,
because if I have a building that's now only 30% occupied versus 80% occupied, I'm paying less taxes.
possibly, but it's a little more, Corey, do you have
Well,
any?
Commissioner,
Yeah.
one thing we always have to keep in mind is that we value based on market vacancy. So, so even though one building may be experiencing above market vacancy, we still value everything based on what the market's doing. And so the market in that example, when the market overall is not at 70% vacant.
No, I'm talking about a particular building when I made that, but we have more than just one building. It's
Sure,
from St. Paul, let's
right.
face it.
Mhm. Yep, and we look
It's
at.
a half a dozen that I know.
Mhm. And we look at all the different vacancies in the area of the properties that are similar. And we try to come up with a market vacancy, what all of them are similarly experiencing. One's a little higher, one's a little lower, and we apply those vacancies to all of those properties in the valuation process to come up with the value at the end. And so, as properties vacate and reoccupy, we keep an eye on that on an annual basis to make sure that we're valuing the properties correctly.
And what if they don't reoccupy I know two buildings have been pretty much empty now, 2 years,
Mhm,
and they were just renovated.
mhm.
Can I ask
Yeah.
you a
Yeah,
clarifying
I'm just trying
question?
to get a handle on
Yeah.
how we're.
Are you asking, so if properties are not reoccupied, how is that going to impact our revenue?
Yeah, our tax base.
The tax base shrinks, but the revenue is the same because we're a levy state. So the revenues are, what happens when one goes out?
Thank you. I used the wrong word.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the levy stays the same, which means we all pay more.
Yeah, other ones go up, the higher,
So.
it's a push and shove, yeah.
You know, I'm trying to get this, we're sort of thinking in silos rather than thinking of the whole thing,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
If we're worried about, let's say, gentrification, we should probably be more worried about the vacancy rates.
Mhm,
If that levy is gonna be spread to everybody else.
correct, yeah. Yep,
So I asked the wrong question. My question should be about the revenue.
Yeah, Commissioner, eventually at some point there will be some tax shifting.
mhm. As those properties shrink, it'll push portions of the levy to other property types for sure. Mhm.
And do we have a sense of how that's trending?
We did, Commissioner, we did a study not too long ago in terms of what the size of the commercial tax base is for apartment. I mean, I'm sorry, not apartment, office in downtown St. Paul. And I don't recall the exact percentage, but it wasn't as large as we had anticipated. We could get you that information.
I think that'd be good for us to know if our revenue is shrinking. I forget that, you know, with the levy, it doesn't make a difference. The revenue could shrink by 50% and the levy
Yeah.
stays the same, because now
Just
all of
pushes
us are paying double.
Mhm.
Good. Victoria. Well, and I think that's a really important point because, how many, especially with legislators, quite frankly. They say, well, the market values have gone up, so you've got more money to spend. No, I had actually a Supreme Court justice telling me that about how we should have more money. I was like, you gotta understand what the state of Minnesota does as far as property taxes. So market values being up doesn't give us more money. Market values being down doesn't take money away from us. It's the formula that is set up to actually cover our costs. So we don't get a bigger budget just because the values go up. Anyway, and it's divvied up according to those values, that is true. But that just means that sometimes there's going to be shifts. And that is, I mean, that's the way it's always been. I think the other thing that's important for folks to remember, including me sometimes, and that is that the property taxes are not all Ramsey County.
Right.
What is it, about a third now, or is it a little more than that? Generally, of the property tax statement.
Yeah, I'm not 100% on that.
Anyhow,
Yeah.
it's not, generally speaking, I don't think it's even half. Because you've got the school districts to take a big portion and the municipalities and all of that. So, but yeah, when people talk about property taxes to us, we get credit for all of it because it's on our letterhead,
Mhm.
is what it
Yeah.
comes down to.
Mhm.
But we only have control over a certain part. And so one of the things that I wanted to say is, I think, earlier today, we heard how GIS helped with emergency responses.
Mhm.
GIS when you've got layers of data is something that can be used to tell a story in a way that numbers can't. So to see, what portion of this, and I think that going all the way back to your question, we have it, but we get kind of an overview of it and it doesn't really tell the story
Okay.
that I think we need to tell. So however you can do that, I don't know if it's GIS or not,
Yeah.
but we do, as you stated, get the overview. And we have, one or two in the suburbs and one or two in the city of St. Paul. But we should be able to give that whole story as far as where it's coming from the municipality, where it's coming from the school districts, the major ones. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know that Met Council needs to be on that layer, but
Mhm.
of course, maybe it does.
think it
coming up
was
now.
on there. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's going up. But anyway, so that's I was going all the way back to what you were asking, is it's not that we didn't have it before, but we need more detail.
You bet.
And we've got the opportunity to do that visually, we should take advantage of that because that helps us. It helps us tell our story to the legislature as well.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you need to respond, Pat, but we have like 15 minutes.
I'd
to
just
go.
love to, because
Yeah.
I wanted to work this into my presentation and you just opened the door for me. It's beautiful. It's like we coordinated this. I love it. So, Chair Moran, Commissioner Moran, we do have Adam Thielen in the room with us, or, Aaron Thielen. I always call him Adam Thielen because I get the wide receiver man. His name's Aaron Thielen. Spelled the same, different. Okay, so, but he has just returned from the International Association of Assessors GIS conference and he's our GIS guy. So it's great that he's in the room to hear this. And yes, we can produce better products for you guys with this kind of information on it, and we will do that and get it to you to show some of the tax correlation by area. We'll produce a couple of different ways. We should have some back and forth so that we get the exact product you want, but we do have that technology and we can do this for you guys and get you really good data. Visualize, because I'm a visual person.
So I love the questions and I believe in asking questions in real time,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
I want us to hold the questions. Write them down if you need to, so that we can get through the rest of this PowerPoint.
I would also. want to-
Madam Chair, I have my hand up, but I will remember that I have my hand up. Just wanted to chime in to say that.
Okay, thank you for that reminder.
You're gonna have to tell us
Yes,
when you have your
right,
hand up
thank
because
you.
we cannot
We
see it
can't
on the
see it.
screen.
Yeah, are you able, do you have a question, a burning question? I know you've been there probably with your hand up for a while.
Oh, I can wait.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
I just want to recommend that we maybe do biannual meetings with each one of you and bring information pertaining to each one of your districts.
okay.
And in addition to coming at least annually to this table, to speak on a broader plane. Would that be helpful
That would be
for
helpful
you?
for me. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Just don't pit us against each other.
Okay.
I mean, that can happen.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
I think I think we need to see the whole impact of the county with a drill down on our districts. I think it's
yes,
important,
thank you.
but don't give us only the isolated information.
Right.
She's saying.
Okay, yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Pat.
But would you like the individual meetings
Yes.
to talk? Okay,
Yes.
all right, let's make sure.
We're
Yes.
gonna let Pat move forward. Go ahead. Or whoever, I'm sorry,
Sorry.
Corey.
Well, actually, I was done.
You did- Okay, the equity impact.
So we're talking about equity impacts, and I will check touch up quick here on some of the stuff we talked about before. Mass appraisal modeling limits regressivity, produces equitable valuations in all property types, and provides fair assessment for the majority of properties, which should give the people and the residents of Ramsey County high confidence that their value can be accurate. We measure these models to find out where we are at in the value column, and this is called the price-related differential. And this is an assessment equity measurement. Now, this is equity inside the value column. Am I treating low-valued properties the same as I'm treating high-valued properties? That's what this is. The range on the international level is 0.98 to 1.03 is what we're trying to indicate as a number. This is a chart, and I'll point you to the spots that we should look at. The price related differential column there. You can see our median ratio is 97% there, but the price related differential 1.01, 1.01, 1.01. We're barely on the regressive side of the scale, but we're almost right dead even at 100% price related differential. So that means we have a very fair assessment inside of the value column. And then 0.98 to 0.103, tight window, takes a lot to move some of this stuff, but when you are out of compliance, it shows up drastically. Some
I
racial.
wondered about that, sorry.
Yeah, use that. Racial covenant work that we're involved with. We're working with a number of partners inside of Ramsey County, Torrens, Auditor Treasurer. We're working with Property Tax Division. We are trying to remove illegal racial covenants, and I say remove all the time, and I'm wrong. It's called decommission.
Disavow.
Disavow. So I say remove, I mean disavow. So please insert that.
Because the legislature removed them, didn't they? I mean, aren't they all removed?
They're
anyway?
all illegal.
So
They're
they're
illegal.
They're not illegal, but they still reside on documents.
Oh, okay,
And
okay.
that's what this work is about.
Okay.
On Torrens property, we have two types, Torrens and abstract property in our state. On the Torrens property, it's really easy for a resident to have it removed. All they have to say is, I would like it removed. And we can remove it from the Torrens stick, disavow. From the Torrens certificate, so that in future certificates, it's not there
Right.
printed over and over and over. Unless there's a rare occasion where it's written at the same spot as an easement. So it may show up a little bit, but we're working on a process to that. So anyways, we're working with Just Deeds, Matching Prejudice Project. We're working with many departments in the county. And the assessor's office role in this is we are gonna be the resident facing piece. So as we're out there on those 5-year property reviews, as that we explained to you earlier, we're gonna have information on our tablets that there's a racial covenant on this house. Can we remove it? Yes, boom, we check box, we come back, it goes to them, it gets removed. That's for Torrens property, that's how easy it is for us. So we're gonna be the resident facing service for that project. We're working with the Torrens examiner on how much volume they can have. Because we're game planning what we're gonna do. Maybe we go for an area that has a lot of these. And we do like an intense search throughout a neighborhood to let everybody know in that neighborhood that, hey, this neighborhood, you can get it removed. And to the point of GIS, Chair Moran, we're mapping it. Aaron's mapping this work, and we're gonna have a start, and we're gonna have a beginning so that we can show progress and figure out where we've been, where we haven't.
And we're going to have a more detailed racial covenants disavowal workshop coming up soon.
And so, some of the other things on here, focus on neighborhoods most impacted, and then we got about 5,000 of these in the county right now that we are working on. So this is exciting for me, the affinity group in the assessor's office. The assessor department is piloting an affinity group, and what this is a group of assessors in our office that have gotten together to talk about how to advance racial equity inside of our office. And how do we engage the community with our message that is so challenging for people to even speak our language, understand, right? So we are utilizing, we have 10 people on our affinity group out of our office right now. And it is the BIPOC assessors that are part of this group right now. And they meet with me and they give me tasks, I give them tasks, and we try to figure out what's the best way to engage the residents of our county. To give them the information they need, but also to grow our office. How do I get people in certain communities to apply for my jobs? How do I get that out there? Not all of them have the assessor doll that I grew up with. The advantage of that. No, so, but, you know, I add a little levity there, but this is a
Yeah,
serious,
absolutely.
serious, situation for us. And we've had a lot of success ad hoc going through current employees to get the message out to their communities, in their churches and their places of where they meet, to say, hey, there's an opening in the assessor's office. You should apply. And so we've been very successful at that, but we're trying to formalize this more and be more strategic on this. So we are a very diverse group in the assessor's office right now. And one of the things that we are looking at right now that you guys will see again is in our performance measures. One of our performance measures we are changing to reflect some of the work that this group is doing. And we hope to be able to present that a fully formed thought during our performance measures in our budget.
And the reason why we say it's a pilot is because we're working with HR, with DIOD, to look at how this is working within the assessors department. And, you know, hopefully then that will, be something that other departments can do as well.
And DIOD stands for.
Diversity, inclusion, and organizational development,
It's part of HR.
part of HR.
So do they all require degrees?
Yeah, who makes a good assessor?
I always say this is, okay, this is my pitch right here. I'm ready. So I always say the best assessor is a bartender. Someone, I'm serious, someone that can provide good customer service and do math at the same time. That's literally who makes the best assessors. As we sit here, I am not a college educated person. I came through. The old school was an apprenticeship, much like your labor unions. I was an apprentice appraiser and I got trained by people. And then I just went through the process of growing my skill set on the management side through experience and growing my skill set through all of the continuing education we do. For the licenses we hold, we're responsible for tens of hours of e-education each year, which extrapolates into hundreds of hours during a licensing cycle. So we have been through so many appraisal classes, and now we are requiring more and more soft skills, management, racial equity. Those kinds of classes are now part of it too. So we're really taking as assessors groups, we're molding people to be leaders and understand what the modern leader looks like.
I think we all had that question on mind. I wrote down education versus training.
Mhm. Right.
Right.
And we're trying to
Madam Chair.
balance.
Yes, yes, Representative,
Commissioner.
Commissioner. All times as I did that.
I have a question. I thought that the assessors, they do require licensing, right?
Yep. Yes, they
And
do.
when you are hiring, do you require that they have the licenses, or is that paid training that your office provides?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner, that we've done it both ways where we've hired people that are already licensed, but we have the flexibility to hire people that are not licensed. The challenge is the requirements that we have to put on the minimum requirements for the job. A lot of the people that we'd like to interview are too far down the list to get to it. So we're trying to think of innovative ways, again, the affinity groups helping us that, so we can write our our initial job descriptions to make some of the other skills just as desirable or just as weighted, just as not desirable, but weighted enough so that we start getting deeper into the list of people that maybe didn't have the opportunity to get some of the training. So we've been very fortunate that the last couple of lists, we've been able to hire a diverse group and a female group. So we've had two out of our last three have been female hires, one on the commercial side, one on the res side, a person of color on the commercial side, and then two two other employees that are very good too and well credentialed. So we've got a good mix and we're trying to be deliberate in thinking about these things when we're doing our postings to try to grow the pool.
Thank you. Chair Martin.
Yeah, when I think about this, I think about, that there's some relationship crossover with realtors.
Mhm.
And especially in our community, there are a lot of new emerging realtors of color. The Hmong community in particular, I think, has the highest proportionality of realtors licensed. That seems to be like an easy opportunity because they're the skill set, maybe not bartenders, but they have community service, they can do math,
Yeah.
they're right, all of those things. And we have a great association that feels like a pretty easy.
Yeah.
And they have the same, they're evaluating properties when they're walking in, right? Because they want to sell it, which is a easy crossover maybe, or maybe you have to untrain some things and retrain other things, but still the ability to learn and then do the licensure because it's similar in the testing requirements, the ongoing stuff. That seems to me like a pretty easy way to get.
Chair.
I would think it's a great opportunity to
Yeah.
create a pathway for
Mhm.
communities of color
Mhm.
to be able to do this. And whoever has the power to write the job description,
Right.
Mhm.
write it so that it makes sense.
Right. And Commissioner and Chair, that is exactly where we've been really successful, is in the realtor field,
Yeah.
because those skills, get them far enough up the list where we can get to interview people
Yeah.
and then make the right choice, so.
Great.
All right, let's flip this page and go to claiming a property tax refund.
Okay, this is for everybody watching, please. Property tax refund for homestead property owners. This is an important thing to limit regressivity, and I'm just gonna put the number out there. I've talked about this every time I'm here, and I just want to make sure residents have that phone number, the 1-800-652-9094, and call and talk about your property tax refund. There's two of them, one's income dependent, and one of them is how high your taxes went up year over year property tax. So get out there and take a look. Ramsey County leaves a lot of money on the table
A
each
lot,
year.
25 million?
Yeah, the last time we checked, it was 25 million. And Commissioner Ortega, I'm ready for your question. You ask me every single time I'm here. Can't we make this automatic? There's a number of organizations. Our professional organization, Minnesota Association of Assessing Officers, the Minnesota Association of Counties, all of us are pushing the same way to try to make this automatic.
Mhm.
A couple new bills in the legislature this year are trying to make it automatic for certain pieces, and we're trying to push them to make it automatic for everybody. Because we have the data,
Mhm.
we know who gets the money, we're holding on to it. Why is there a
Who gets the money when?
general fund?
It goes back. to the
That's
general
why,
fund.
that's why it's.
That's fine. Yeah, always the
So-
lie.
On that note, I would also recommend, as you're lobbying in your associations, that we don't have this deadline date. Because the federal government will, if I haven't filed my taxes in 2017, just starts collecting, right, and charging. There's no deadline for them to collect taxes, but there's a deadline for us to receive our money back. So that deadline could, because if people didn't know about it and they're like, oh, I've never claimed my property tax. Can I do a 5-year look back or a 10-year look back?
Yeah, and it's just 2 years, Commissioner,
Yeah.
to your point. Yeah, that's something I wrote down and I'll bring that to our group to talk about. But currently this year, it's a 2-year look back, basically, you can get the current year and the previous year.
So for the public who have not already filed for 2023, the deadline is August the 15th.
And they could have
this year.
filed their taxes already. It's
Sure.
not, their income tax is independent of this.
Yeah.
It can be in conjunction, but it can be independent. So, if you want to file for your 2023, you have until August of 2024.
Yeah.
And then you can file for your.
August 15th. Last question.
Well, this is just, I had a question asked about how soon after you purchase something do you have to have it homesteaded?
Mhm.
Is it in the calendar year? Is it in 10 days? Is it
For what?
residential?
To gain the property tax refund
No, just in general to get the.
by
homestead
December
card.
31st.
Oh, so
So
it is just
homestead.
in that year.
Yes.
So maybe let's check in. Commissioner Zong, do you have a question before we end? We have, we're here, but.
Yes.
Okay.
Going
Go
back to
ahead.
the slide Yes, going back to the slide about the performance measure, PRD. I had a question about it because, we are kind of trending at that 1.01 piece. What will it take for us to move towards a more progressive one? And I asked that because, several of my constituents who live on the east side, they've owned their homes for, several years, but they also say they haven't made any sort of improvements. Why does their value keep on increasing? And then the other part too is, are we considering in income factors of communities as well when we are looking at the values? Because if the incomes actually don't really increase in certain communities, it means that it's an under-resourced and community where they may and most likely could not have made investments into the properties. Because I just share this anecdotally, but when I door knock neighborhoods and I go back to it, a few years, it looks worse off than it did before. And I just had a question about that, about like what we can share with our residents about that. And then number two, the most important piece is like, how can we get to a more progressive way of assessing and measuring the values of homes, of properties?
Chair Moran and Commissioner Jean, thank you for that question. We've talked about this before, but the regressive nature of property tax it kind of lays out, so for the PRD to move a ton and try to steer it towards progressivity may affect our median ratio. And the challenge is that the higher valued property holds up that that difference, right? So if you're 5% off on a high valued property, that's much more than 5% on a low valued property. So then it tends to always measure that you're being a little progressive or a little harder on the low value properties because the value difference, it takes much more to do that. So the way that we have tried to do equitable assessments and focus on meeting guidelines, but yet assessing with a heart, as you were, is we try to keep our median ratios lower in areas to try to promote this. So to your point is we try to aim our ratios when we're doing our values and measuring our ratios down around that 95, 96, 97. We try to be below 100%. And sometimes when our values are accelerating, it's very hard for us to get down far enough. But unfortunately, I can't take into consideration a person's ability to pay their taxes when I'm valuing their property. I'm just able to value at what I think the market is doing. And so to create a model that is more tight to a specific property group in a little area, that seems to limit regressivity quite a bit for us. And we'll always have that in our mind when we're building our models, Commissioner, that we are trying to be the best version of assessment that we can. And we think about those things when we're coming and when we're measuring PRDs and stuff, so that we can be down as far as we can to make sure that we're being fair, but we're being equitable in the same challenge. And it's a challenging thing, but we strive for that every assessment season.
So, Mike Chong, I know, I just want to say thank you for being so patient. And if you have one last question, we're gonna let you close us out so we can adjourn.
Okay. Yeah, I have one last question. What about like, has there been consideration for the land value taxation tool at all? Or is that something that is just that the city needs to implement, or the state does?
Well, it would take a state law change, Commissioner, to allow us to do that. There is a lot of talk around the legislature right now. I am on my desk right now. I have a book about land value taxation. And I'm reading up on it and I'm getting more and more wrote on that because I'll probably have to speak at the legislature, hopefully sometime soon on it. It's challenging because it may or may not be the way to what a lot of people who authored the bill are trying to do. To not have these vacant pieces sitting there waiting development held by developers and moving them along. Because I just don't know if there's ever a situation when values are rising on land that the taxes would be enough to make the investor change their mind about their hold times and things of that. So, but yes, it's something I'm starting to look into. It's not something that the state of Minnesota does currently.
But I want to thank everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for everyone for your patience. Thank you for coming in to update us. And if we have any more questions, we can contact you and your team.
Yeah.
So with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks.